What is up, guys? Chris here, Bear Market Mining. Thanks again for stopping by. So today we're talking AI rentals again, and in particular why my farm is seriously struggling over the last couple of weeks. There's been a number of different factors that I believe are contributing to this, some in my control and some out of my control. So today I want to talk through that with you guys and get a bit of your input, because I got a lot of questions, right? I'm learning throughout this experience just like you guys are. So let me know your thoughts on particular topics down in the comments. And without further ado, let's get into it. All right, guys, so to start, we're in the mining room, right? Because this is where all the action takes place, or in my current situation, the lack of action. So for those of you who have been in here before, you may or may not notice, but it's a lot quieter than it normally is. You can probably hear that ASIC going right next to me with that big intake fan. But other than that, there's not a lot of fans spinning. And over the last month or so, we've had a ton of different issues with the mining farm, the AI rigs, power, internet, all that sort of stuff. So to start out today, I want to take you through what's going in here, what's online, what's not, and just start running through a multitude of different issues and reasons as to why we may or may not be getting rented as much as we should be. And then we'll jump onto the computer and talk a few more details, because it's not just about what's happening in here. There's a few other things at play. So let's get you turned around and let's start talking through it. Okay, so to start, we've got our 4 rigs on the wall here. We've got our 2 5090 rigs, one there and one more down here, both with 7950Xs on them, both currently not rented. They have had a couple of jobs here and there over the last few weeks, but they're mostly crypto mining jobs. They mostly only last about a day or so, so definitely not the rentals we need right now, or the rentals that we are getting. Now up top here is the current only rig that has been rented and is rented at the moment. It's the 5070 Ti. Again, on a crypto mining job as well. I think it's probably making $1 a day after power, so meh, not really doing much there. And then this 5060 Ti rig down here. Can you see it through those cables? Probably not, but you get the gist. Now all of these have got DDR4 and DDR5 RAM, 64 gigabytes, so they're fairly well spec'd rigs, but unfortunately not rented, and making about $1 a day. So yeah, that's not ideal, as you could imagine. So turning you around here, we've got this 4060 Ti rig, which I had online for about a month. I think it had about 40 rentals or so. Then it went offline, it crashed a job, it got down to like a 98% stability score and never rented since, which is just annoying, right? As soon as you lose that 100% stability score, you're barely getting rented, right? Unless you've got the cheapest price and the best hardware. So we've got a monitor set up there, we've been testing that out, got it back online now, but it's got no rental history. And it's competing against a bunch of other rigs with similar specs that are charging like 4 cents an hour. So, hard to compete, really hard to compete. And then moving up top, this last rig that we've got, you might notice, is offline. Why is it offline? Well, that did have a 3090. That 3090 is now here. We bought this for about 450 USD about 5 or 6 weeks ago. Was going gangbusters, was permanently rented, and then it died. And it can't come back online, it seems, or I can't get it online. I have been told by people in Discord, join the Discord by the way, lots of people in there, we need more members, keep them coming. But anyway, I have been told you can put this in the oven and it will, like, I don't know, solder or melt like certain microfractures back together. It may work, but you got to take the fans off, redo the pads. I don't know if I could be asked doing that, guys. Let's be honest. Let me know if it's worth a shot or not, because to be honest, for the hours and hours that it's going to take me, I'd almost rather just leave it and call it a loss. Yeah, so that's really, really disappointing as well. We do actually have this one other 3090 rig down here that's got a 7945HX on it, also not rented. So yeah, things aren't really going smoothly at the moment, and it's, it's not just because, this isn't good spec or well-priced hardware. There's been a couple of other issues with the farm specifically that have really, sort of hurt my rental opportunities. Now, for those of you who don't know, over here on the east coast of Australia right now, well, in Australia in general, it's summer, and in Queensland where I am, we get some of the worst storms in the world. It's called storm season most of the time, barely summer for a reason. It'll be sunny one minute and then there'll be an absolute, ground busting lightning strikes all around you. It's absolute chaos. And that's knocked a couple of my rigs offline over the last few weeks. Not only have I lost a couple of jobs because the internet or power went out, but I've also, played it smart and shut some rigs off. So, 5 or 6 weeks ago, even a couple of months ago, I had, say, 50, 90 rigs that had 100 jobs on them, 100% stability score. And then the second, like we said with those other rigs, that they lose that 100% score, they just do not get rented, right? Which is a real pain in the ass. People just are renting either the very best hardware at the cheapest price or the cheapest hardware they can find, depending on what GPU it is, to crypto mine with it, right? And, I get that. They're trying to make as much margin as possible, so the less they spend on renting these rigs, the more they make. I completely get that. Now, I have looked into a couple of options as to how to sort of negate, this internet issue. I've looked into like business internet plans, with 99% uptime plans and backup redundancy plans, but they are so expensive, right? So the install and infrastructure cost to get it installed here would be about $5,000 for all the lines, the modems, you're paying for the labor as well. And then it's about $1,500 a month for the plan. And it's still just a 99% guarantee. And I've spoken to a few people in the know, and they say they put it at 99% because there's always that chance, right, that it will go offline. So it's not foolproof. So after spending, 15 grand on all this hardware over the years, to put another 5 grand in install plus 1,500 a month, it's just not worth it. Particularly when we've got this one rig, which is right below this camera right here, that's making 6 cents an hour. So do the math on that. It doesn't quite work out. So definitely a bit of stuff going on that's sort of been hurting us at the moment. But it's not just what's going on in here, markets change, competition rises, all that sort of stuff, more hardware coming online. So let's jump on now onto the computer. I'll show you what we've sort of made over the last, whatever period, whatever I decide to show you at the time. And then we'll talk about the competition, the pricing, all that sort of stuff. Let's get into it. So as we can see, guys, looking at my farm right now, it is super bleak. We've just got this one 5070 Ti, which is on this SWPSCO miner launcher. I'm assuming it's some sort of crypto mining thing, because my 5090 rigs have been getting, a bunch of these over the last, week or two, for a day here, a day there, but nothing of substance. So from memory, 100% uptime score is 30 days thereabouts. So, these rigs have all been online for the last 2 weeks. That 5060 Ti has been on pretty much the last month. And this 4060 Ti, as we discussed, has just had to be reset. That was probably my last standing rig. But about 2 weeks ago was when we got a bunch of those storms. These two rigs initially had been online for 3 or 4 months. I think their node numbers were in the single digit, maybe 900 and something or 1,000 and something, almost in the single digits. So they were sort of OG nodes, but times have changed. So about 2 weeks these have been online. And if we look at a couple of the sessions we've got right here, it's all just this minor stuff, right? 2 hours, 12 minutes, 16 hours, nearly a day there, a day there. So they've maybe had 4 days online worth of mining in the last 2 weeks, which is not great. And, maybe made, what's that, about 100 or so OctaSpace. So $15 or so, give or take. Probably barely enough to cover electricity. They've probably just been breaking even. And we see this theme continue on, this is my other, I think 5090 rig, is it? Yep. Same sort of thing, a few render jobs here or there, but the duration's just even worse. But at least they're getting some rentals, right? The 5090s, but as we said, probably barely enough to cover power. This 3090 rig, again, just render jobs 6 minutes, 50 minutes, 45 minutes, 2 minutes. So just absolutely not a lot happening. This 5070 Ti. How long had this one been online for? Can't even remember. So yeah, about 15 days again. Two jobs in 15 days this 5070 Ti's got, and we'll see the same again with the other rigs. You get the gist. The 5060 Ti, you know, basically nothing in the whole time that one's been online, for about 30 days, and then the 4060 Ti. Now we got one OctaSpace job as soon as it went online, and that's about it. So not a ton happening, and these are all pretty well spec'd rigs, all 64 gigabytes of RAM. You know, 1 terabyte SSDs. I have a feeling my first issue may be my upload speed. So we get, you know, basically a gig down, but we can only get 100 up for now. There are some new plans coming that can give us a gig up or thereabouts. But I think that might be the first reason why some of these rigs aren't getting rented. Maybe I'm competing on upload speed, but from what I've heard, that really doesn't make too much of a difference. Because a lot of the jobs that I've seen, people are barely uploading anyway. So maybe an issue, but maybe not. Now, issue number 2, the competition is just absolutely outrageous, right? So I think in the 3090s, there was 127 of these currently available. And like everything, it's an absolute race to the bottom. You know, 8 cents, 7 cents, you know, 6 cents. Even people with reasonably good hardware, you know, this guy's got a Threadripper Pro, a 5995 WX. This is 64 core, but look, his internet speed's kind of doo-doo, so you know that's probably playing its part there. But you know, rigs, 10 rentals over the last nearly 30 days, 18 rentals. You know, with 68 upload, only 285 down. So maybe the internet's not a problem, but definitely the competition is causing some problems, and also the pricing. So if we look at the 5060 Ti example, you can see mine here. You know, 6 cents I've been trying to rent this thing out at, and you've got people here at 5 cents, 5 cents. You know, with a 5060 Ti and a 5900X, if it's doing any sort of mining job, it's using about 200 watts, right? So you might be lucky to maybe make $1 a day off one of these rigs. You know, when you consider this whole setup is about $1,000, you kind of question exactly why you're doing it at some point. It wasn't always this way. I'm sure myself and some other creators are to blame for this influx.
Who the fuck is that guy?
But I still believe, you know, competition's a good thing. Just right now, there doesn't seem to be a lot of demand. I could be wrong. Maybe there's a bunch of rigs that are online, but I'm certainly not seeing them. Now, of course, OctaSpace isn't, you know, the only platform that we could use, but again, across the board with a lot of these rental platforms, you know, we look at Clore, for instance, you know, 5090s, again, a race to the bottom, $2.10. $2.10 these people are renting their 5090s out for a day. Just with a 5950X, but even a 9950X, like this is really good hardware, you know what I mean? And they're getting nearly a gig either way. So really, really good hardware. I could only assume that these sort of people just have free power they're renting, like, because there's just no way, like this rig, the 9950X and a 5090 at full noise will be using 900 to 1000, you know, 900 watts probably. So I'm not sure what the electricity rate you're getting for some of these sorts of rigs are. But again, we'll see that across the board. And the prices have just really, really dropped. You can see those random, you know, 5-card rigs that go for a bit more, but still more of the same. Now, I did look into Nosana a while ago as well, but there's just not the demand there either. It's mostly benchmark jobs. The 50 series market is still closed. And in fact, I know a couple of people who've got 5090s on the marketplace. We're in the premium that have now been kicked off. So they're obviously cleaning up that space as well. So across the board on a few of these different platforms, it seems like the competition's high. The pricing is really, really low. And not just competition with as far as, you know, number of rigs, but also the quality of rigs, you know, 7950Xs, epic boards, and even better, which brings me to another platform that I want to talk about and get a bit of input from you guys from. Now that platform, of course, many of you have heard of it, is Vastai or Vast.ai. So pricing a lot better. You know, you can earn a bit more here. You know, these are going for 47 cents, but you need the hardware to match, right? Like, so these are all epic boards. Well, a lot of them are anyway, you know, 64 or 128, you know, core boards. And look at this internet speed, right? I'm assuming this is internet speed up and down, you know, 7 gigs one way and 4 gig the other way. So, you know, I did try Vast a while ago. This is where I need a bit of your input. I believe you need like a 30-day uptime to get one of these scores up. I'm not sure exactly which one it is, but I just didn't have the patience for it. You know, I saw a bit of a, call it a gap in the market. If we go into the Oceania, we're just looking for 5090s and 3090s here, and none of them are available. Like, there's no 5090s that you can rent here from, you know, Australia, New Zealand, the Oceania region. But my question would be is that going to affect, like, are people going to want to rent? You know, what's the advantage apart from ping that someone would want to rent a rig from Oceania, you know, as opposed to, you know, the States or somewhere closer, right? Because let's be honest, I'm out here in the middle of the ocean, right? So we're ages away. If ping is an issue, which I doubt because we're not gaming here, but maybe you guys can fill me in a little more on that. So I would love to be able to jump on Vast just for something different as well, but I just don't think there's any way I can compete. You know, these are pretty much all epic boards. They've all got a gig minimum either way, you know, 7 and 4. I'm just not sure if that would be the platform, you know, that I should go to. Now, the last potential downfall I want to discuss is an error on my part. Well, I think. So if we look just behind me here, we discussed this 4060 Ti rig before. Now, when I first started building these rigs, 5090s were and still are thousands of dollars. So my thought process was, let's build budget rigs, right? You know, even this 5070 Ti, I would still consider budget, and the 5060 Ti, 2 months ago, those rigs were getting rented for 15+ cents an hour, you know, and they were getting those, you know, image jobs that were using no power. So the math was mathing. But lately, you know, with that increase in competition, and I think that race to the bottom with pricing, why would you spend, you know, 10 cents on a 3090 when you could spend 20 cents or even less on a 5090 or a 4090? So I think, you know, spending this money on these budget rigs, while yes, they're efficient, you know, they're good for your sort of hobbyists, right, who are just trying to rent a little rig out that has 16 gigs of VRAM to do a little render job or do something simple just to hold that VRAM. But if I had to do it again and I could take the cost of that 5070 Ti, the 5060 Ti and the 4060 Ti, I've pretty much got myself another 5090 right there. So that's probably something that I would definitely do differently. But considering right now that not even these 5090 rigs are getting rental, I think that the diversity probably helps, you know, in some regard. So all in all, guys, definitely not in the best spot we've ever been with these rental rigs. However, I think things can definitely pick up. Timing is everything. There's gonna be lulls in the market, but as we said throughout the video, a lot of stuff going against us lately. You know, those internet dropouts, you know, causing our low stability score, then resetting the rigs, meaning our rig, you know, might only have 2 rentals against a rig that's got 200 for the same price. I don't blame people for picking that rig with the more consistency, and it's more reliable, right, in their eyes, so that makes sense. You know, the competition increased, the demand decreased, the race to the bottom of profitability. It's all really happening at the moment, so interested to know what you guys think. You know, what's the main issue here? Is it my internet speed, the stability, all the sort of stuff we've discussed today, guys? Let me know down in the comments and give me some information on Vast, you know. If you're experienced with Vast, is that something I should try out? Can I not compete at all? You know, does the Oceania versus, you know, USA or Europe factor matter with ping or whatnot? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.